Welcome, Synergee listeners. We're going to have an interesting conversation all about modern functional medicine practices, right, Kelly? And what are our challenges?
I know we often get the question like, what are your 3 top challenges with functional medicine? You know, in this modern day world, running a practice. I've had my practice 20 years now, and Lori's practice is what, 17?
Yes.
Yeah, 17 years. We've lived a little bit. We've learned a lot.
Yes.
And so we really started having this discussion together. You know, 3 things kind of stood out to us as like ongoing challenges that just weren't temporary, but these are things we face on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis, regardless of the climate in functional medicine.
Yeah, and I think it's an important conversation too, because there are a lot of functional medicine practices popping up everywhere. And we get the question all the time from them, and some of them, right, reaching out to us of what are you guys experiencing? You know, what are those challenges, and what are some hurdles we won't have to overcome? You know, there's going to be enough of them that they can't predict and they can't plan. So what are they? So let's start out. Let's talk about number one. I think the number one for both of us in chatting was the implementation piece. Is how do you implement? I mean, we go to these classes, we hear about all the new research, and it's how do you implement? And implementation's a real struggle. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so, and these are not ranked in any particular order. You know, when we really wrote them down, we're like, we can't really say this is the number one, but implementation is huge. And, you know, for my functional medicine practice in Jackson, Mississippi, I always run things through the filter. As Lori mentioned, we go to classes, we spend hours and hours learning, studying, researching, fact-checking, and I always run whatever I'm trying to implement into the practice through a filter. Is it regenerative? Is it allowing the body to repair itself? Or is it just a quick fix? And so that's kind of number one with me. I go through that thought process of, am I helping the body repair itself? Because the body's constantly trying to repair.
So it's constantly really sifting it through that filter, because there's so many things that you can put in the practice. And I think one of the things that, you know, I have encountered in my practice in Florida is that although there are a lot of things I could be doing that would be fantastic, at the end of the day, what should we be doing?
Right.
And sifting through that's not always easy, and I've made my mistakes.
Yes, we have.
Spent a lot of money on a lot of tools and a lot of devices and a lot of things that at the end of the day, they just didn't align.
Right, they didn't align.
So, and that was costly on many levels, from a staffing standpoint, from a financial standpoint, but you have to know ultimately what it is in your practice that you want to focus on. What's your niche? You know, who is it that you want to treat? So, and then when it's time to decide to implement, then I think that brings us to...
Yeah, the biggest challenge with implementation really is communicating what it is you're trying to accomplish with that tool or resource. Number one, to your team, so that they can help you execute that. And then number 2, to your patient base, your audience, your followers. And that's a big undertaking, right? We have all these ideas. We come back from conference so excited about the things we're going to implement. And in the early days, oh my gosh, we would try to implement, 5 things at one time. We would blow back the hair of our clinic managers, and they would just be like, oh my God, not another conference, right? Because they know we're coming back with tools and strategies to implement. But what we learned from that was really slowing the pace down. Spending the time training your team is essential. It will save you a lot of time, effort, energy, and they feel more engaged with the process. Your patients can feel that. And so really taking the time to make sure you have your policies, procedures, and training in place.
Right, which kind of falls into the second challenge is keeping pace with the environment of functional medicine, because this arena is changing so fast. I mean, inundated with research. We should be doing this. Is this right? That's the conversation forever. This particular nutrient or this particular device. What is it? So keeping pace and slowing ourselves down sometimes, right, in that implementation process, and making sure that we are staying ahead too, right? We are pioneers in the field, and we are out there chartering, ahead of the rest, right? So we got to take some risks too. And in that, you want to make sure that we're taking those risks that we need to be taking, but not necessarily as quick, right? It's that cautiousness that we have to apply to it too.
Mm-hmm. So keeping pace, we do that a lot through going to conferences. We have key conferences that we do attend yearly. We have people that we follow and that we trust that are really digging into the research, that have mentored us over the course of years. But it still can be overwhelming. I think we feel we have FOMO a lot when we can't go to every conference. It's like, are you going to this one? I can't go to that one. As life gets busy, sometimes we can't always go to everything we want to attend, but there's a lot out there, and we have to pick and choose what we choose to invest our time and energy into learning and then bringing it back to the community. And that comes with it. That's a fast pace. It's a pretty hard, fast pace to run, honestly.
It is. And I think that kind of takes us into number 3, right? Keeping a healthy ecosystem around our health and our team's health, because we do want to make a difference and we are committed to helping our patients feel their very best. But at the end of the day, if our cup is not full and we're not well, then how can we help others? How do we keep that ecosystem in the course of very fast change?
Yeah. And so, to Lori's point, we can't help other people if we can't take care of ourselves. And so really making sure that we're creating life balance in the workplace and modeling that for ourselves, our teams, and the patients that we serve. They need to see that that's a possible way of living life. We're in this for the long game, not the short game, right?
100%.
We can do the short game pretty hard and fast, but in the long game, we have to really think about when to push, when to pull back. There's a time to reap and there's a time to sow, and we have to kind of learn what that rhythm and pace feels like, and be willing to say, okay, it's okay to take a pause.
For sure. And there are seasons with that, right?
Yeah.
So there are seasons, when you've had practices, as long as we've had, there are seasons that are harder than others. And in those seasons, recognizing that we may have to do more to buffer and really protect that ecosystem. And so that's an ongoing. So those are the 3 that we came
major
up
challenges,
with, right?
Yeah.
So implementation, keeping your head around creating that healthy ecosystem, and then keeping pace with the ever-evolving environment.
So let's talk about the fun parts of doing
let's do it. Let's do it.
Modern practice in today's world. There's so many. We had a hard time limiting this to the top 3.
We did.
But we're going to dig into the top 3, and they're just so powerful.
So I want to start because I think one that tops the most for me, and this is just my heart, my soul, is just seeing the difference that helping people achieve optimal health, the difference that it makes in their life. The stories change, the relationships that are healed, marriages, life healing, and spiritual change, physical change, nutritional change. It's that for me. That is my favorite part.
And it's interesting the way that God works, because I think that oftentimes after a really hard day, the next day you get to witness that. And it's like, okay, God, thank you for that little wink. I am doing the right thing. I am making an impact. And to your point, being able to see life change on a consistent basis is just incredible to be part of that. And that's really what keeps me in the game and keeps me wanting to interface with patients directly on a day-to-day basis, because I feel like that's where I'm supposed to be. I don't question where I'm supposed to be when I'm in that seat. And I take that very seriously. I know Lori does too. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to sit in that seat, and I get to hear a lot of things. And I hold those very sacred in those conversations, because it's okay to have those hard conversations and I want to provide a safe space to do that.
For sure. And in doing that, that leads to our favorite number 2, right?
Yeah.
It's building a wellness community.
Yeah.
And that community isn't just in our individual localities, like in, Central Florida or Mississippi, right? It's been really, really cool to watch the ripple effect. And I've always said I really wanted to create a tsunami effect to better health. And it's such a joy and an honor not only to change the lives of those locally, it those ripples go to, their children and then their grandchildren and then their grandchildren to maybe their teachers or their pastors. And so it is. And it's really cool to hear those stories too when you all share them with us.
Yeah. And even seeing the wellness community grow in the way of tools, resources, and honestly in the way of food access. I think back to 20 years ago, there were certain things we just didn't have in the grocery store. People weren't thinking about organic. They weren't thinking about the variety and diversity of foods that we really need in our diet on a daily basis. So even seeing that aspect grow, to see our local farmers being supported by local restaurants, right? I mean, that's just such a blessing to see that blossom and see that we do, right here in Central Mississippi, we do have access to good quality food and resources. So that's been a blessing.
We do too in our community, which is, like you said, it's really cool to go to a restaurant and see them supporting local farmers and having good quality food that's fresh, from the farm to the plate. So,
And then our number 3 favorite thing was, the challenges. We love the challenges. I think we would be completely and utterly bored with the same conversations and the same things on a day-to-day basis, but the challenges that functional medicine brings, the questions, the curiosity, the insights is really what keeps us going back to those conferences and keeps us implementing things. And I think that's the fun part. And that's been the really fun part with Lori and I doing that together.
Yes.
Being able to bounce things off of each other, being able to experience things and share stories and protocols. I mean, I can't say enough about how comforting it is to have someone else in the game that you can have those kind of conversations with.
Yeah. And challenges are definitely opportunities to grow.
Yeah.
And as we're talking to each and every one of our patients that we get an opportunity and a privilege, right, to work with, your questions, you're allowed to question. And in those questions, it forces us to grow. And I think those sometimes are challenges, but they're challenges that have grown us. So I think, in our modern functional medicine practices, particularly in that conversation that we get a chance to, because we're spending an hour, right, with our patients, we get to go deeper. So I really am thankful for, as you said, us too, in doing this together, and then the communities that we get a chance to share with.
So Lori, what do you mean when you say healthy ecosystem?
I just firmly believe, and I have since the start, that I have an obligation to make sure that we are cultivating an environment that provides personal and professional development. And so that's education, that's learning. We're learning at the same time. They're on their journeys too. And so we spend a little time kind of just connecting with each other. Like we do a little check-in of emotion. Where are you today?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, we do that too.
And then dig into the learning. And maybe we have a topic, we have a coach's corner. So whatever our coaches are actually teaching community, they're coaching us too. And then we have an opportunity to just share with each other some of our frustrations, our challenges, and go through the schedule. But to me, it means that we spend time together and we are cultivating an environment that we're growing at the same time as we're helping our clients grow and learn.
Absolutely. That time, it can seem like a huge chunk of time out of your clinic day, but that time is the time to create cohesion within the team. Yeah. It's the time to give them a voice, letting them speak up, letting them talk about their challenges, right?
For sure, yeah.
And then pouring into them, letting them know that we understand you're on your journey too. We want to support your journey, and these are the things that we think are important to learn.
And
so
when we're
I
talking
love that you're doing that with your team as well.
And when we're talking to other clinics that we get a chance to with Synergee to work with, one of the things we tell them is make this a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Make it a non-negotiable. And we've seen the difference between the two when they haven't done that for whatever reason.
Right.
I mean, in the very beginning, we did make it a non-negotiable from the very beginning. And that was just great advice from a business consultant to us. But there are weeks that it's kind of like, but this week we have fill in the blank. And it could be very, very easy to just
let them fall off the schedule.
Yeah, easily. And so I do think it's extremely important. If we're going to be keeping pace, right? And that's what we've talked about today, keeping pace, then our team members have to keep pace. And we're responsible for that.
So just this week, I had a patient come in and she was there for her lab review, which means that she had labs collected. She had walked through a 21-day metabolic reset. So she was there to see her response from the reset, and she was there to get all of her lab results. So that's a big day. That's a big visit.
It is a big visit.
And I kind of had some intuition about her that perhaps reset wasn't her favorite thing in the world to do, right?
And that was at your initial visit with her.
Yeah,
that was kind of your
I kind of just got
right?
some intuition that perhaps it was going to be a challenge for her just to get started. I felt like if she got started, she would be fine, but just getting started. And so I just asked her casually, I said, well, tell me, how did you, I said, I think I asked her, when did you finish your 21-day reset? And she told me. And she went on to say, I've never been able to tolerate a protein powder before. I've never been able to tolerate a multivitamin before. And I felt like this was amazing. And I just kind of took a deep breath and I said, I'm so proud of you. Like, I was really concerned that you wouldn't even take the first step because of your concerns about tolerability to your supplementation. And she said, well, funny thing. She said, I wasn't going to start it. She said, I had made my mind up. I was just going to do my labs and then kind of change my diet and start working on some things, but not really go full force with the reset. And she said, I was laying in bed and I heard God speak to me. And God said, if you will follow what she's telling you, I will heal you. And I was just like, oh, that got me like really, really deep. And it was just a really good discussion around just obedience. And it's not about me. Right? It's about her journey and what she's able to do and what her body's able to do in the way of healing. But it was just one of those heartwarming, like a God wink that, you're doing the right thing. You're encouraging the right behaviors. And it was just awesome.
And you used your intuition too, right?
Yeah.
And it led you to those quality questions to gain some more insight and really help her connect, I think, those dots too. You're right.
Yeah.
So that's cool stuff.
That's cool. And you shared a story with me earlier this morning that I would really love for you to share, because one of my passions is preconception medicine. I feel like if we can affect these ladies that are having babies now, then we're affecting probably 3 generations out. And so you had a really cool story this past week too.
I did. It gives me chills even telling you about it. It was a cool story. So I've been treating a young girl for quite some time, about 6 months. I mean, it's not a long period of time, but she came to me. She's getting ready to get married. She was getting ready to start her life together with her boyfriend. They have been together for quite some time. And she had been really frightened or fearful, I think is probably the word, that she wouldn't be able to get pregnant. And some would say, already wanting to get pregnant? Well, yes, this was very important to them as a couple. And so she came to the clinic going, I want to get my life right. I want to get back on track. I want to make sure that I'm eating and drinking and doing the things that I need to do. And so as we were sitting through this last week's consult, she was coming to the end of phase 1, which phase 1 for our clinic is they've done the reset. They've really spent some time digging into the foundational, what to eat, what to drink, and all of that. And she was treating her gut. And she was feeling a lot better. She's dropped a lot of weight, offloaded body fat, has a lot of energy, but still is living with quite a bit of fear. And anyway, long story short, she converted into phase 2. And I got a phone call this week and she is pregnant.
Okay.
And I got so excited. I got an opportunity to pray with her in her last visit with me. And that doesn't happen often, but I had a nudge that it was the thing to do. And we had an opportunity to just spend some time together and got that call, this week. And it was just a reminder again, you're in the right place. You're doing what you need to do.
Right.
You're listening. And it not that prayer alone, it's a combination of so many things, but we get the chance to see lives change. I mean, who couldn't love that?
Absolutely.
Who couldn't love that? So Kelly, why, today we really wanted to talk a little bit about the challenges and the awesomeness, if you will, our favorite parts of a modern functional medicine practice. Why did we choose the word modern?
I know, right?
Yeah.
So as I thought about that, so much has changed in the way of functional medicine in the last 20 years. And I can think back in the very beginning when I first started doing gut protocol. And gut protocol is all centered around really trying to change the ecosystem of our gut microbiome. And back 20 years ago, we didn't have a whole lot of language around that, honestly. We didn't.
No.
And our tools to do that were very challenging as well. And so the very first probiotic I had access to, this was before probiotics were in a pill. This is 20 years ago. It's hard to, I mean, I'm old, okay? I guess I'm just going to say that. But we had this probiotic powder, and we affectionately called it pond water. And we would have patients drink it for 14 days, and it really did taste like pond water. And I was just amazed that patients would actually do it. Like when they would come back, I'm like, oh yeah, I got through it. And I was like, God, they really trust me. Like, this is a big deal. It worked. Yeah. It was just very challenging because of the way that it tasted and the way that it smelled and all the things that go along with drinking pond water.
Yes.
But thank goodness that modern advancements in creating stability with those bacteria, being able to get them into a probiotic capsule, and most of our probiotics don't even have to be in the refrigerator today.
Yeah, that's true.
In the past, they had to be refrigerated. It was just very complicated to get a probiotic in someone and to effectively change that gut microbiome like we can do with much more elegance today.
Yes. And when I think about modern, I think about when I started, I don't know that I really knew that I was practicing functional medicine, to be honest.
Yeah, that wasn't a word either. That wasn't 20 years ago, that was not something that you talked about. It wasn't really, I mean, true enough, naturopaths have been doing functional medicine from day one. That's kind of how they were birthed. But we didn't have the language around functional medicine.
Right. So, and I think about where I started was weight loss.
Right.
Calories in, calories out. I had a major life change as a result of, just figuring out, if you will, that the symptoms that I was having were in relationship to my blood sugar being completely messed up.
Right.
And so I went into this going, I want to help people offload body fat. That's what I did. And in offloading body fat, my blood sugar got controlled because that's what I did. Right. So in that time, that was all about that. It wasn't described as functional medicine. So started there, and then 6 years in, wasn't even a part of anti-aging and restorative medicine, regenerative medicine, the A4M fellowship, if you will. Right. Met you years later, and then realized that I wanted to do more and go deeper. And so I think that the terminology of functional medicine, to your point, what do we even call it? Functional medicine, integrative medicine, regenerative medicine, restorative medicine, anti-aging medicine. I mean, so I think, modern is the movement towards more of that root cause approach. Right. And then modern meaning we have tools and resources available to us now that are very, very different. And it's, as they say in the movies, come a long way, baby. I think we've come a long way. The Synergee podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.